Okay, so the next thing I want to talk to you about is your demographic. So if you have been working in your industry for a while, this will probably be so simple for you. You'll just think, oh, I know my demographic. Just visualize what customers are coming through the door, who's signing up online, who's buying your product, like who is that person? And there's probably a variety of people who fit in this category, and it really depends on your brand. But by knowing your demographic, you're going to know how to better market yourself, how to educate your audience, how to educate your demographic, how to educate your customer, your future customers, and also where are they hanging out online. So this will help you really determine how best to use these platforms. Now, I'm just going to tell you straight up that I feel like Facebook and Google are the best platforms to start out on for most things. Now, this is not every group, every demographic, but for most things, it's this nice balance where you can have Google, which is the long game of 3 to 6 months to start getting traction, and then you start really getting traffic after that 6 months, and from that traffic you can get conversions, communities, so on. And Facebook is a really nice way to get traffic pretty quick. So within the first month, the first 2 months, you can start getting traffic right away. You can start getting them to your website and start really testing your product. So a nice strategy that involves both platforms can really help you win long term by working really hard up front and getting the returns long term on Google, and also building up some nice traction up front on Facebook and really getting to know your community, finding out where they're hanging out, what they're thinking, what they're saying, what they like, what they don't like. That isn't always the best method. Some industries are not allowed on Facebook at all, and some industries are extremely regulated on Facebook and extremely regulated on Google. So you might have to go to another form of social media in order to reach your people, and that's okay. So I'm going to show you a little bit on how to find your demographic and what questions you need to ask yourself to really make sure you know and understand your demographic. So first things first, do you know for certain there's a problem your product or service solves? And if so, what are those problems? So take a moment, write those down, understand for yourself, what is the problem that you're solving? Because really, people will use money to buy experiences, to buy things, and to buy really solutions to their problems. So if you are solving a problem, you need to know what that problem is. What need are you fulfilling? Then the next question is, who will your product or service help? After that, why would your product or service help? So if you're selling gum, for example, your product may be for people who experience bad breath or for people who want to feel less anxious. There's actually studies that have been done that show that if you chew gum, it does something in your brain that turns off your fight or flight response and helps you calm down. So maybe your audience is people who are struggling with anxiety and really want to keep functioning well. And so the demographics of that, you could do a little research, do a little Googling. Who struggles with anxiety can be your question to Google. And Google probably has a lot of answers for you about the age and where these people are hanging out, and are they more densely populated in the Rocky Mountains? There's a lot of statistics around that. Are they living in cities or out in the country? Like those kinds of things can help you really understand who is going to be best served by your product or your service. Next question, what does your product or service fix? And what are the results people can expect to see? So by using your product or service, by participating in your coaching, by being a part of your community, what do they get out of it? So maybe it's a sense of reassurance, maybe it's community, maybe they become more healthy, maybe they become more empowered, maybe they get the house of their dreams, they can get that car they've been looking for, they get to be more creative, they get to enjoy a nice story, like whatever it is that you're giving out there, what do they get out of it? And then how will your product or service help them specifically? So just really fine tuning and understanding your what you're offering. So this is you with you, understanding your authentic message, your authentic brand, your service, your product. Answering those questions will help. Then from there, let's understand where our demographic is hanging out. So let's say you've narrowed it down, you understand, you're like, well, my demographic is typically women between the ages of 45 and 65, which again is a huge part of Facebook, is where our older community is hanging out. So then you go in there and you go, okay, well, let's look at them. Like this is particularly for a dog product, but this is nice because you can look at it and be like, okay, Grandma Joe is 55 to 75. She's interested in her dog's health. She's got money to spend on her dog. She wants her dog to be a member of the family. This is a companion of hers. She cares deeply about them. And what's nice about this is in your branding, you can work on voice. So it's like, how do you talk to this person? How do you as a brand speak? What's authentic to you as the owner of the brand, as the business owner, as the small business owner? And also, how do you really get in the mindset of your person? How do they want to be talked to? When I write captions on posts on Facebook or on any platform, for Google, when I'm writing an article, when I'm writing to someone, I visualize that person. Whatever person in my life represents that demographic. And if you don't know anyone in your life that fits your demographic, go find them. Figure out where they're hanging out in the physical world and go hang out with them. Join a club, go to park, like whatever it is that'll help you authentically meet these people. Spend time with them. Ask them questions. Don't tell them how things are. Just observe. Just absorb. I like to sit next to people who are older than me because most of my demographic age groups are older. Most of the products and clients that I work with are working with people who are older than I am. So they're in their 40s and 50s and so on. And so I actually like to sit in the room and watch them scroll. Like, how do they scroll on Facebook? What do they click on? How fast do they scroll? What intrigues them? What images are pulling them in? Those kinds of things. So that my brain is always gathering this kind of data. I'm going to show you a little bit more on how to shorthand that as we go along. So just visualize that person and talk to them. If you're making a video, I want you to visualize that you're talking to that person and talk through the camera to them. Ignore the camera, ignore the mic, ignore the medium, but really like reach through it and reach that person. Say, when I write a caption and when I write a title and when I write an article, I'm really trying to share it pretend they're my best friend, and I'm trying to help them understand why I'm so excited to share it with them. So that this will help you with your tone. Another potential demographic, millennials. So here, this is a little bit of a jump, but it really helps you understand what are these people focused on? This is the same set of products, but millennials have a different approach as to why they want to give their dog the best and why they're willing to invest in it. Their motivation is wildly different, and it's cultural, and it's also experiential, and this is a great way to really understand like what's going on. As you can see, there's a lot more quotes that involve hashtags over here because of the specific demographic. So then after that, understanding a little bit more into brand and message. So I don't spend a whole lot of time heavily on branding for my clients that have smaller pages. So if you have under 50,000 followers, I recommend doing a couple of these principles, but really you can just kind of, as long as you understand your demographic, as long as you understand who you're talking to, you can skip straight to making content and figuring out and getting your feet wet. It's more important to get out there than it is for it to be perfect. If you wait for everything to look and feel perfect, you're not going to be seen. And honestly, so few people are going to actually see you in the very, very beginnings of what you do, that it's okay for it to not be perfect. Once you have a lot of momentum, you can really work on focusing in on the quality of the brand. And the reason why it's important long-term to have some of your brand elements in place is because you want people to see your brand and immediately feel the feeling that you're trying to project. So brands and products and services and communities all come with a certain feeling. If you can attach them to a feeling, either of like, I'm enough, I'm empowered, I'm powerful, I'm strong, I'm informed, I'm educated, like those symptoms of a feeling of satisfaction, a feeling of, like get in touch with how a brand makes you feel. It'll help you get into someone's subconscious. So when they're scrolling on Facebook and Instagram, or they're scrolling on wherever they're scrolling, they see your stuff and they immediately recognize it on a subconscious level before they see who shared it, before they look at how many likes it has. The font, the color, the feeling that the image is portraying, the voice, the vibe, all those things will be like, oh, they immediately know that that's their favorite influencer or that's their favorite brand. They just know because they feel connected. It feels personal. It feels real and authentic. And that is what's so important inside of branding and inside of social media, is the ability to reach someone, have it feel real because you are making it real. and then using and leveraging that relationship to benefit both of you. So you give and give and give and give, and you educate and you share and you inspire and you empower. And then when they are ready, they buy your product, they buy your service, they share it with their friends and family who need it or want it or could use it. And it becomes a win-win relationship right there. So with logos and with branding, once you get more at an advanced level, you can start to look at like all the different variations of how to do like a longer logo, and then how to do an actual icon. So icons are important for either the little square profile image on a brand, or it can be used as like a watermark on videos, on images, things like that. So it just shows us a touch of branding so people know that it's from you. So this is an example from Spotify, how they do it. They also have a brand guide of what not to do. And you can hire brand experts, or you can follow some brand guidelines online. You can Google it to develop a brand for yourself. I do recommend knowing the exact hex color for your brand so that you get it right across the board. There are programs out there to show you how to do that, which we will show you later in this course. But pretty much when you pick a color, make sure you also get the hex color so that you can find it and recreate it over and over again. And then as you can see, they talk about how to use it, how to use the content, what fonts to use, those kinds of things, and what else you can do for this particular brand. So now I want you to be able to use the tools that are out there to find and understand your own audience. So you can even just type into Google, where do women ages whatever hang out online? And there's articles on that. So then I'm like, okay, well, let's click on what's the top article. Social media, where your demographics are, and it actually will break down and show you. So you're like, oh, what about Twitter? Bam, Twitter, women, 24% female, 23% male. Well, okay, I don't know where the rest percentages are, but maybe they're unclaimed, which is totally acceptable and maybe a specific demographic you're going after. And now you can see the age range. So it looks like Twitter's just a little bit younger, relatively. You can see where they're hanging out. So you've got a nice balance between urban, suburban, and rural. And then you can see some of their income levels. So it looks like actually 32% of people on Twitter have a nice yearly income that could be useful for purchasing whatever you're selling. So getting to know that's important. Then, as part of this, you can look at what are the stats for some of the other platforms out there. So here's an example of, I just Googled Pinterest demographics and it came up with total number of monthly active users. You can see 300 million. That's a little less than the population of the United States. How many are from the US? So 85 million. Total number of Pinterest pins. So it's a widely used platform. Total number of Pinterest boards, total number of Pinterest users, and so on. So what you can do from here is look at, if you find out that, hey, your people are really heavily hanging out on Pinterest, then you would want to Google what kind of color schemes work on Pinterest, what times of days should I post for Pinterest, that kind of stuff. So giving you a little bit outside of the realms of what we're going to be talking about on the course, so you know where to go from here. But know that we're going to heavily focus on the Facebook strategies and the strategies that should work cross-platform. LinkedIn is fantastic because it's kind of like Facebook was a few years ago. Shorter videos work really well, and there's a lot of opportunity on here to educate and share content, and it actually performs really well. So you can see a lot of the users are actually not in the US, and there's a lot of really interesting statistics here, but a lot of the users are very active. So it's a nice platform to reach your people. Okay, so after LinkedIn, we have a up-and-coming platform called Tick-Tock. So Tick-Tock is fantastically addictive. So what it is it's mostly a younger age group, but it is being downloaded wildly. These are statistics from 2018, and I'm telling you, it is still exploding. It has gotten even bigger. They're short form videos, less than a minute, and they feel very natural, very organic, and people are super engaged. They typically listen to it with sound on, which is not always the case for videos on other platforms. It is a great way to meet and connect with some younger crowds. There are some older people on it, and they are fantastic, open-minded, and typically have a great time. And the ads on there are very engaging. Like, I feel like I actually want to watch them because I know they're short form, because I know you're going to get your message to me in a way that's interesting and entertaining. And there's a lot of really cool functionality there. So with that being said, these are some of the statistics from Tick-Tock from 2018. So 66% of the users are under 30. It did start out heavily as an app in India, but has continued to grow in other areas of the world. So there's a large population of young people, of cosplayers, of artists, and actually a lot of LGBT community hangs out on TikTok. There are definitely all types of people on TikTok. However, a lot of what we're seeing is people who feel safe and comfortable sharing and expressing themselves on that platform, and sharing and expressing things together, and really being able to freely flow. So if you have a product or service that involves either an alternative community or an artistic community or a music community or maybe a fantasy or gamer community, TikTok might be a fun platform for you. Back to what I was talking about earlier. So the reason why I suggest Google is because they have been around for 21 years. That means Google, it just became an adult recently. Maybe they can legally drink now. I'm mostly teasing. So Google, what's nice about Google is it has been around for a while. So they have settled their algorithm for the most part. And it's pretty predictable what they want from us in order to perform over here. So SEO, or search engine optimization, is the tools we use to create content that will rank on Google. So if someone types in a question on Google, you want to show up as the top answer. If you don't show up as the top answer, you want to at least show up in the top 10 on this front page. If you are on the second page or more of Google, you are probably not going to be seen. Like, the statistics are astounding. You want to be on the front page. You want to be the first answer. Now, people typically type questions into Google. If you just type in the word Google, let's say, actually, let me use a different example. If you are trying to understand more about your Yorkie, you're probably not going to just type in Yorkie. I mean, you might, but even though this word gets a ton of search volume, people are much more likely to type in like how to feed my Yorkie. So this is what's known as a long tail keyword. So it's got several words in it, and you can actually work on ranking for specifically long-term keywords, and it's a lot easier than trying to rank for the word Yorkie. You can rank for both, and if you rank for this, it's much more easy to rank for the short form keyword or the single keyword. This is some of the stuff that the reason why I recommend investing a little bit in what you're doing in your blog, on your website, making sure that you are strategically trying to rank for Google keywords so that you can get traffic all the time and diversify. You don't want to be on one platform and only one platform, because if something goes wrong, if you get hit with a page quality violation, if Facebook shuts you down, if your demographic moves or changes or something else happens, you don't want to lose all of your traffic. You don't want to lose your business. You don't want to struggle. So diversify, get on Google. 90% of the world uses Google. So that's why I'm specifically talking about Google. Obviously, there's other search platforms. You've got Yahoo and other ones out there. But for the most part, most of the world is still using Google. That's why Google has become a verb. Oh, well, I'm going to just go Google that. It is a platform that is pretty, been around for a while. They do make changes, but most of those changes are geared towards creating more authenticity, more authority on their platform. So if you are speaking and using their platform in a way that both shows your authority, your knowledge, and is medically safe and also compliant with their standards, you're going to thrive over here, and you're going to get the traffic that you're looking for. But you got to play by the rules. So that's why we're going to go over that a little bit in this course, and much more deeply in the actual SEO course that we are launching side by side with this course. So take a look and make sure you educate yourself on what is compliant, what is not. Google is very sensitive around health brands and very sensitive around financial brands. So you need to be careful. You need to know what you're talking about. You need to make sure that you are sourcing things properly, and we will dive into that more heavily. So the next thing I want to talk about is Facebook. So Facebook's 15 years, so they're just a little bit younger, still a teenager, still figuring their stuff out. And we know that is happening hardcore for them as they are pulled in front of Congress recently to actually become accountable. So since then, Facebook has really worked hard to become compliant in the world's eyes. They realize that they have a platform that they do have to regulate. And if you can just imagine the nightmare here, Facebook is really trying to make sure that you feel safe and feel comfortable and feel connected. They really are pushing Facebook groups a lot at this moment, but really they don't want to get in trouble with the government. They don't want to do things that are going to get them in trouble. However, if you can just imagine if you owned Facebook and you had users creating content every single day, millions upon millions of pieces of content going out, there's no way for you to hire a big enough team to regulate that and to monitor that. So they use AI heavily to make sure that everything is compliant, and stuff still slips through the cracks, but they work really hard to keep it clean. So sometimes they do what I call a Facebook purge, where they will go and they will actually take down Facebook pages that are not being compliant. They will hit you with page quality violations if they think you're trying to play by the rules, but you're messing up here and there. Now, even with all your best intentions, there is still a certain amount of, you're probably going to get a couple things wrong here and there. And Facebook has third-party fact checkers that are crawling their platform, looking at your content. And if you share something that is fake, you could get what's known as a fake news quality violation. And there are ways to resolve that. Step one, don't ever remove the post. If you get hit with a page quality violation, watch our page quality violation video for how to fix that. Do not remove the post. If you remove the post, probably won't be able to get it off your page. And having a page quality violation does is, in the short term, it limits your traffic. So they'll strangle your reach. They'll make it hard for people to see what you're posting, and they could eventually shut you down. They could shut down your personal account and just make it really hard for you to ever advertise or organically get traffic. So we want to be compliant, and we're going to teach you how to be compliant with images. We're going to teach you how to be compliant with videos. We're going to teach you how to be compliant with articles, and just your whole message, how to be compliant with what Facebook wants, and make sure you understand what they don't want so you can be on board with what's going on there, and how to work with their third-party fact checkers. So Facebook right now is crawling all the way back to, I've seen so far back as 2016. So they're looking back and looking even at your quotes, and they're like, Bruce Lee didn't say that. And so you have to make a correction in the caption and resubmit it and get them to remove that page quality violation. There are other types of violations. There are violations for spam. There are violations for clickbait. There are violations for just incorrect information in general. So we're going to have a whole video on how to take care of that. So don't you worry. We've got you. Facebook demographics, 43% are female. 57% are male. Most of them have about 155 friends. 62% are seniors, age 65 and up. 72% are between the age of 50 and 64. So this is a fantastic age group for people who are aging. They are looking for new things to spend their money on. Sometimes their kids are grown. If they had kids, they're either slowing down their careers or getting out of their career. And oftentimes, and not always, but oftentimes they have money and they're interested in spending it. So shopping is a fun thing for them, and targeting them can be very effective on Facebook. That's why I said most of my demographic hangs out here for my clients, and so I've spent a lot of time really getting to know what works on Facebook. And let's see, 88% of users of the age of 18 to 29 are on Facebook. So of the people who are this age, 88% of them do have a Facebook. So even though they say the kids are hanging out on Snapchat and other platforms, they still often have a Facebook account. So there is a way to reach them here. You can use Facebook targeting to reach them, and use some of the leverage on Facebook to target them on other platforms and so on. So most of the people on Facebook have an income of over $75,000. Which is fantastic if you're looking to make money on Facebook. And then they talk about some of the other users across the globe. So Facebook can still be a fantastic tool if you know how to leverage it right. I do recommend, if you're starting a Facebook page, that you also marry it with a Facebook group. Facebook loves when you make groups. Nurture your group, build your community, advertise to your group. Between running a Facebook group and a Facebook page, you should be able to build a very solid following and good traffic to your website. Instagram is another platform that is owned by Facebook. Facebook bought them a couple years ago, and they have a good amount of users. As you can see, over 1 billion users, over 500 million people use it every single day. Stories is where a lot of the platform is moving to. So when you're scrolling on Instagram, you're seeing what's known as the grid, and that's where you're going to have the posts that people are just posting onto their Instagram. But if you click on stories or click on their little profile icon, you'll see Instagram stories, which is about 15 seconds and less videos that people can use to either show their day or brands can use to show storytelling, things like that. I highly recommend using Instagram stories. You can't put links in Instagram stories at this point until you have over 10,000 followers, but that can be a good way long-term to drive traffic. What's interesting about Instagram is even though it's not link heavy, if you build a solid following and people feel really engaged with you, they will go to your bio link and click on it. And you can use tools to make it so that when you click on your bio link, there's like 5 different links that come up that they can choose from, that kind of stuff. So you don't have to feel as limited, but it's much more intentional when it comes to driving traffic. It's a great platform to advertise on, which you can put a link in any ads you decide to do. That's not a problem. So Instagram and Facebook, I just want you to know that when I talk about rules on Facebook, just assume they apply to Instagram. Instagram, I understand, is a different platform when it comes to the actual types of content you can put up and the format of that content. But I'm telling you, when it comes to the general rules of what you can and can't say, just assume Instagram has the same rules and or will apply them soon. Now, this is something else to think of. Because of Facebook being 15 years old and Google being 20 years old, which I already clicked away from that, you can assume that the platforms that are younger are kind of following in their footprints just a little. Now they are unique, they are different, and they have different goals, and they're trying to go in different directions. But when someone is already ahead of you and has created a huge wave of momentum, it's easier to follow behind them just enough to avoid pitfalls. So when you're a smaller company, like let's say you are Pinterest or TikTok, and you're watching what's happening with Facebook, you understand that once you get to a certain size, you will be held accountable to the world governments and to other types of regulations. So they are going to be trying to implement principles earlier on and eventually that are similar. So upholding copyright law, upholding fake news, making sure that you're compliant with posting things that are true and factual, that are scientifically sound. That kind of stuff is going to be important long term. So make sure that you are being compliant as you're building your brand, as you're building your content, as you're building your messaging. And even if you are a medical doctor and you make a medical claim, you have to say that it may help with whatever illness or whatever. It cannot say that it will, which is an obvious thing to a medical doctor. But if you are working on a medical doctor's team and you're making content for him or her, then you need to make sure that your content is stated in a way that will be compliant with Facebook and will be compliant with Google. You cannot make claims that aren't true. You cannot create things that are just going to mislead people, because they want to create platforms that people want to come back to over and over again. So with that being said, this is the basics of understanding your demographic, understanding where they hang out. And now we're going to dive deep into Facebook and content to make sure that you know all the tricks and tactics for how to thrive over there. So stay tuned.